And we're on. So, welcome everybody to the Sales and Marketing Alliance podcast with our friend Tim Kist. And we have a very special guest today in Gary Brownstone. Hey, Gary, how's he doing today?
Going great, Scott. How are you?
I am doing very, very well.
Good. And how's Tim?
Him is doing outstanding as well.
Good to see you.
Tim is always doing well. So, how do we want to kick this off? So, I think we've all known you for a few years, although I think Tim's known you longer than I have. And we have a bit of an understanding about what you do at Catchfire, but maybe for the millions of listeners who will be watching this at some point, you can just tell us a little bit about what Catchfire does and how you help your clients.
Sure. We kind of found many years ago that I'll call it mid-market companies, mid-sized companies that were owner operated have faced some real challenges when it was time to exit their business, and they weren't really sure how to go about it, and the kind of professional expert support was not really accessible to them. And of course, given the kind of demographics of the world and the aging baby boomers, there's a huge transition happening. And I had been through many acquisitions and sales in my career and kind of started lending that experience to our clients.
Tim, anything to add or question Gary on before we transition to the dad jokes and then get right into it?
No, I'm going to save my question specifically for the subject matter that this podcast is based on. So, and it builds off of what Gary said as an intro.
Okay, so again, this is the Sales and Marketing Alliance podcast, which is really about sales and marketing working together, but a broader description of just helping companies grow profitable revenues. And one of the most critical factors in that is the ability to tell a good joke. So I am going to have Tim start with the dad joke of the day today before I do mine, and then we get into it with Gary on Sales and Marketing Alliance.
All right. Well, I've got a couple of quick snappers for you guys. So the first one is, why can't dinosaurs clap their hands? Because they're extinct.
Oh boy.
And Scott knows I've got a whole bunch of fountain pens. I really like fountain pens and things, but I have a pen now that can write underwater.
Seriously.
Yep. It can write other words too.
Are you sure you don't want to get on this, Gary? Because this is some classic stuff here.
And all of
Sorry,
this
guys, I'm
comes,
having some intermittent internet problems, so I'm not sure I really heard what Tim said, but I'll catch up with him later.
So he's trying to say they're not funny. Okay, here we
no,
go.
but here's how I
Wait.
can help him, because there is a shirt that I saw on the weekend. My wife looked at it and said, do they have one in your size? And it said, you find all of the dad jokes in the dad base.
Oh no.
No, they didn't have my size, so I don't have the shirt.
Okay, here's mine, and then we're going to get into it. For anyone who's still on, three golf clubs went into a bar. The putter asked for a beer. The wedge ordered tequila. The third said, "Nothing for me, thanks. I'm the driver."
A responsible joke. That's
Oh, come on, you
outstanding.
guys. That really should have tore everybody up right there.
We're
Okay.
holding back. We're holding back.
Okay, so Tim, why don't you kick this off in terms of picking Gary's brain about this whole thing about profitable revenue and growth in the Sales and Marketing Alliance.
Sure. Thanks, Scott. So, Gary, in the work that you do guiding companies to successful exits, as you described what Catchfire does, do you see the sales and marketing functions adding the required value? Principally, I'm thinking by establishing good confidence and trust with their customers, which should theoretically lead to improved profitable revenue and then an improved sales position when the owner wants to exit. Do you see that there's that synchronicity between sales and marketing?
Yeah, so before I get to the heart of the question, I just want to say that the phrase you guys are using, profitable revenues, I think is great because, as you know, not all revenue is good revenue. I know when businesses are early stage, they want to take any customer
Yeah.
that comes in the door and have to, right? You got bills to pay. But to migrate a business to the point where they're thinking in terms of profitable revenues is important. So Look, sales and marketing, to me are kind of yin and yang, right? They're the left hand and the right hand of the part of the business that brings in oxygen, that brings in revenue. And they have to work hand in hand to be able to do that. Because everything that anyone knows about your company is, in my opinion, that's what marketing is. And sales is a close first cousin to all of that. Okay, so that's kind of my first comment. Having a well functioning sales and marketing team is always an asset when selling a business. If you get down to the numbers, having consistent sales and sales growth, um, and demonstrating an ability to do that, to continue to demonstrate value to customers, adds value to the business. Anything that involves recurring revenue, of course, will drive up a value of a business, predictable revenue. If I'm buying a business and I can see what the cash flow looks like for the next 3 years, that or a big chunk of it, that really de-risks it for me. And one of the biggest ones, and especially in the mid-market where we operate, is that um, a lot of companies still have a big part of their sales driven by the owner operator and by those relationships. And again, as a buyer of a company would look at that and say, if Bob with all these relationships is no longer here because we've bought him out,
Yeah.
what happens to the sales of the business? And so having, some kind of sales process that isn't always connected back to the current owner, again, will make it more attractive to a buyer of a business.
Interesting.
Okay, that's I understand that for sure. At one point in my career working at MTS and their M&A group, certainly that whole concept of recurring monthly revenue was huge. You can sell individual big ticket items, and sometimes they are profitable, but it's not something consistent. So getting to your point about the 3-year projection, if you got some RMR, it's a little easier to do it. Otherwise, you need a much deeper understanding of your customers' buying patterns to predict when they might have to replace those larger assets. And if there's some sort of specific or regular upgrade, 3 years with my laptop and then I got to get a new one type of thing. So in your work, how do you reconcile with somebody and is there a chance that somebody can change from a one-off type sales model to looking for something that's a little bit more predictable?
So, first of all, not every business, of course, as you know, would lend itself to recurring revenue. My business does not. I mean, we do some fill-in work. I don't mean that to minimize the importance of it, but our business is, we work with a client for 9 to 12 months. We get them through a transaction. We typically go and have a nice dinner together to celebrate, and we move on to the next one. So we don't. Our business is not based on a recurring revenue model, and many aren't, right? A real estate agent, for example, a manufacturer, even who gets orders season by season. So not every business lends itself, but every business is sure looking for ways to have that. So, what I say, Tim, is like if you're in a certain sector, there are a range of kind of multiples that buyers will use to assess what they're willing to pay for your business. And it's a continuum, it's not a fixed number. So if you have some of these attributes, it moves you to the higher end of that continuum. And if you're lacking some, it moves you back to the lower. So it's a bit of a sliding scale.
That's terrific clarification for that. Thanks, Gary. Scotty, over to you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because these things are also highly, highly tied together. So, my question was around how, when you see that sales and marketing is aligned, how does that help you? And you've already talked about de-risking and maximizing the value of the company. So maybe I'll shift my question a little bit in that when you're working with an organization and there is the sales and marketing function, they should be aligned. Which one do you tend to see could use some more help? So is it the sales function? Is it the marketing function? And of those two, what are the typical challenges that you see of whichever function is maybe not typically as driving the revenue number itself.
Sure. I mean, look, every element of the business should always be looking for ways to improve and get better at whatever they do, right? Whether it's the finance or the manufacturing or the sales and the marketing. So, I think like I'll use that as a blanket statement. As owner operators or as senior managers, we're always looking for ways to drive, improvement in the way we operate our business and the way we meet the needs of our clients. Um, so in sales and marketing, I think that depending on the nature of the business, um, I think one is I want to be careful. I think that look, they need to okay, let's just take a step back, and if you guys want to edit out that little fumble there, that would be just fine with me. Either way. Um, The thing with sales and marketing is that I find in a lot of businesses, and maybe this is just based on personal bias, I find they don't get the full attention that they require.
100%. Yep.
A lot of times, owner operator comes into the business with a very strong technical knowledge.
Yes.
So maybe they have a trade, maybe they came up through the ranks on the factory floor or whatever into a project management position and whatever. It's not always the case, but a lot of times that's the strength of the owner operator. And so sales and marketing is a little bit of a black hole to a lot of operators,
Yep.
and they don't really take have the need or take the time maybe to understand what drives that process. And having a great product or service, but not being able to communicate that to your customers and getting them to see value in it, it doesn't really bode well for your business. So,
I want to call an audible on that because you said something that made me think. So, coming from a sales background and Tim with a marketing background, we both have our perspectives. We talked about this a lot. My experience has been, and you mentioned an owner having a specific expertise. What I tend to find is that let's just say for the sake of argument, there's five main functions in an organization. My tainted view of the world is that those other functions will typically get more time, attention, and investment than would a profitable revenue generating function of sales and marketing. Is that your experience? That if you could make an easy number and say there's five critical functions in an organization, sales and marketing is the one that may tend to not get the same amount of love as those other parts of the company?
yeah, I mean, it's hard to generalize, right? People tend to either be, I call it hunting and cooking. You're either a hunter and you like the sales and marketing and go out and find business, or you're the cooker and you're on the fulfillment side of the business. For someone who's a cooker, becoming a hunter moves them way outside their comfort zone,
Yes.
right? And I've worked with chefs, and I've worked with computer programmers and engineers, and I've worked with people with very, very brilliant engineering skills. But to get them to then become the hunters, I mean, you both know, Tim and Scott, that picking up the phone and making a cold call for the very first time is maybe the scariest thing ever. And you have to learn to love rejection, and you have to persevere. And that's, still with all the technology in the world, that's still for us, that's a huge driver of stepping outside of a comfort zone, phoning someone into a black hole and facing, the old, yeah, thanks, I gotta go, click kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's uncomfortable for a lot of people to make
Nobody
sales.
likes rejection. I think you handled that with a great answer, although I was trying to get some controversy here and I wasn't getting it. So I'm going to pass it back over to
Well,
Tim and see
sorry,
if
just before you do, there's another element to it, Scott, and I'm sure you guys face this all the time. There are so many poorly or untrained salespeople in the world that it's really given the whole image of sales a bad reputation. And some people think, what could be so hard about it? Um, right? Just call the guy, give the price, and make the sale.
all right.
And
There's what people think about salespeople, right? From
right?
to sell human. Daniel Pink's going to pay me royalty, but you're right. I think we could talk about this forever, but this notion that sales is icky or that sales is easy and anyone can do it, I think is a big reason why your comment is so valid in terms of there being so many people that do a poor job of it.
I'll add to that from a marketing perspective that unfortunately marketers haven't helped themselves either from a professional positioning perspective. And what I mean is, I'm an old school holistic marketer, the four P's: product, place, price, and promotion. Most people, when you talk to them, and I would think this probably holds in the mid-market space, Gary, founders would think marketing is that promotion piece only. It's getting that message out, etc. They don't look at how all of the other components fit together. Is your product easy to understand? Is it actually providing value for the customer? If so, it makes it a little easier for that salesperson to tell a good story that can be created the right way with the right information, etc. So marketers, unfortunately, will often follow the latest shiny object to try and get some awareness, to try and get some coverage. Think back a few years ago when Pokemon Go was going to be the latest, greatest marketing thing ever. That never happened. And we can count, a whole bunch of other ones that have just flash in the pan. And a marketer's problem is that they chase those shiny objects too much. The discipline. So, Gary, in your work with a company, it has to be very disciplined. Marketing and sales is the same. And the challenge, sometimes holistically, if you're looking at controlling costs, the two costs that often get cut first are marketing, which should be about understanding and helping position your product for your customers, and training. And it speaks directly to your comment about the salespeople. When you're working with the mid-market, do you see people not understanding the need for investment in sales and the need for investment in proper marketing? Or am I wrong on that one?
No, and again, I mean, it's hard to kind of use one brush to paint, every
Sure.
business. So we see the full spectrum. But yeah, in a lot, first of all, I think it's very common that people think marketing equals advertising.
Yeah.
Second point I wanted to make was, Scott, to your kind of comment about the connection between sales and marketing. The most direct connection between sales and marketing, and there are 100, but to me, the one that summarizes them all are the pricing decisions that the company makes, because that's a marketing decision every bit as much as it's an accounting or finance decision. And
Mm.
whatever that pricing is, sales have to be able to go. The whole business is counting on them generating those sales at those margins. And if they can't do that, then the whole business will feel that, right? And so that to me is the most direct point of contact. And then what are you getting for that pricing? What's in the package?
Yeah.
Well, that's a marketing decision, but sales, that's your bread and butter right there. Can you sell those packages at those prices in enough volume for the company to survive? So there's no separating the two. That's number one. Number two, look, and this is not a criticism. Most of the owner operators I know, like I say, they came up through the ranks. They did not come to the business with a lot of, in many cases, not again, there's a wide spectrum, but maybe not a lot of formal education, experts and pros at what they do and how they do it. I know very, very successful entrepreneurs that never finished high school, as well as those who have, advanced postgraduate degrees. There's a spectrum out there,
Yeah.
but everyone has their comfort zone, and I think our job in what I do and in what both of you do is you always have to be educating the market because people
Yeah.
just don't always know what they don't know.
Very true. Very
100%. And
true.
I think this maybe is a nice segue into my second question, which is, your role is to help take some of the risk and some of the questions out of the sales process of selling your business. Um, Obviously, there's a bunch of things that you want to support a company with, and this is why you need a couple of years of runway to help them with that. So, in terms of for organizations that maybe don't recognize what the symptoms are, or the ramifications, what are some of the things that you see with an organization that's looking to sell, but their sales and or marketing functions aren't optimized or aren't working well together. So what are the things that you need to see that you typically see companies struggling with?
Yeah, so I think what we've talked about already, repeatable processes that aren't owner reliant.
Repeatable process.
To
Okay.
me would be number one. Number two, in some industries, I would say what I see is an over-reliance on inbound sales as opposed to outbound sales. So we got a lot of people who can answer phones and take orders and quote prices and tell you if we have it in stock or not, but we don't have anyone knocking down doors and sort of introducing the company. That's a fairly common symptom that we see. Look, when someone's buying a business, they come at it with a level of optimism, right? It's like I'm going to buy this business and I'm going to find ways to grow it in some way, whatever that means to them, or modernize it or update it. And the more that the infrastructure or the foundation of the business is there, the easier it will be for them to do that. And the less that that stuff is there, you can still probably sell your business, but the buyer is going to say, well, in addition to what you want for your selling price, I'm now going to have to
Yeah.
invest X more dollars in building that infrastructure. I always use the analogy of your house, right? If you live in your house for 25 years and you don't do any work on it in 25 years, the buyer looking at your house says, well, I'm going to have to change the roof and the furnace and the windows. And so that's going to cost me, I don't know, I'll pick a number out of the air, $100,000. Right? And this guy wants 500,000 for his house. Now I'm in for 600,000. Is that within my budget or not? Or that person can come in and say, wow, here's a house that's ready to move into and I can make it my own by doing what I want to it, starting here and taking it to the next level. Same with a business. So either you're building that, you're maintaining that business in a ready to sell kind of state, professionally managed, the books are in order, the processes are in order, quality assurance is there, the service levels are there, so that if and when that day comes, one day you wake up and you just say, I'm exhausted. I want out, and you're ready to
And
sell.
you're ready.
It's like your house. Other people, you come in and we do this with companies where we'll come in and say, you could use a coat of paint over here and you got to fix the cracked concrete over here and the doors are squeaking and we'll help them prepare that business or the house to go to market and make it more appealing to buyers when they go. So to sales and marketing, like any other department of the business, having that working optimally with repeatable processes, with some initiative and some outbound out in some outreach, I'll call it, modernizing the marketing, for example. Are you using your website to the best of your ability? Is it driving leads for you? Is it fulfilling certain sales functions where you don't even need humans involved anymore? So there's a lot that young legs would bring to a business going forward.
So before I pass it on to Tim, part of what I'm what I'm hearing is this notion of whether it's just because you want to grow profitable revenues and or it's because you're looking to sell, get those fundamentals, get those repeatable marketing and sales processes in place so you can drive profitable revenue, not only because you want it now, but you're particularly going to want it when you go to sell so you can maximize that
Yeah, it's just
return.
good management practice all through the whole life cycle.
Mr. Kiss, final question.
I don't know if it's so much a question as a bit of a wrap up first, and I was going to say essentially the same thing, Scott, the fundamentals.
Yeah.
It's Gary, it's something that Scott and I talk about an awful lot for businesses is having those fundamentals in place. And you've gone beyond the sales and marketing fundamentals and talked about the other aspects of the business. And I think that people don't typically understand the importance of all those little things adding up. They'll look at it as a big thing. Oh, gee whiz, sales are down. We need to do something in sales. Darn it. We got to fix something here. So we need to do a marketing campaign. But stepping back and looking at it and saying, how do all these pieces fit together? And how is it not only creating value for the owner to sell, but also the work that we're doing, is it actually creating value for the customer? Because that's what's really, at the end of the day, the most important piece. Do people want to buy our product or service? So we do all these other things to make sure we get to that point. If I roll that into a question, in your work, and again, this is a generalization and all generalizations are false, including this one. Do you see the owners, given the context that you provided about the range that you've worked with and know in that mid-market space, do you see them understanding the importance of all of the integration beyond just the sales and marketing, but that full look at the business and saying, I may like these things because they're fun, but we need to do these other things because they're also important. Do you see them with a holistic view because they may not have all the resources that a large company would have, for example?
So,
Good
oh
question.
man, we could use another couple hours just to dive into this topic, but let me say this. Of course it's holistic, right? Like I talked earlier about hunting and cooking, and I don't know, maybe I'm a simple guy, but that's kind of how I see the world of business, whether you're the largest or the smallest corporation. If we go and we hunt and we bring home a mastodon for the village to feast off of for a month, right? If the cooks spoil the food, right, overcook it, leave it out in the sun, and the maggots get all on it, then whatever we've hunted has just gone to waste, right? And vice versa. Like to me, your product, you mentioned earlier, the four P's, the product, that's marketing. The price, that's marketing. I'll add a few, like the packaging or the bundling of the product, right? The service that goes behind that product, the quality assurance. And not everyone looks to make the best quality. That's why we have segments in markets. So like to me, there's when I went to business school, you were either finance or you were marketing, and that debate will go on forever of which is more important, which is great because you need the left side and the right side of the brain working together. But of course, it has to be holistic, Tim. And you and I think, have talked about this before. To me, I find one of the oddest things is that early stage business people rush out to get a name for their company and a logo. Those are the first two things people want to do when they're starting out. And to me, I think that's all backwards because until you understand who your market is and what value you're going to provide to them, that to me, I guess what I'm trying to say is to me, all decisions are informed by the market.
100%. That is the wrap question and the wrap comment from you, Gary Brownstone. Thank you. That's you passed dramatically. That's great stuff. I love it.
We should probably just end on that, right?
I think so.
Whatever the market suggests, we're talking about fundamentals, we're talking about repeatable, successful processes. Maybe the only thing I might add is, I had a conversation with somebody on LinkedIn the other day, just yesterday, and the question that I asked was answered by this idea that so many people out there want the silver bullet, and there is no silver bullet, right? It's about putting in the work, putting in the effort of all the parts of the business, letting the market dictate, having sales and marketing talk to each other, get those fundamentals down. It's not rocket science, but it does take work. And I
Sure.
guess
And,
that's
and
just
look,
it,
it's the
right?
same, it's the same thing, guys. I'll just leave you with this. When we're selling a business, it's no different than selling washers and dryers or automobiles. And some other day we'll share some stories about, bad salespeople in different fields. But it's about identifying customers' needs and demonstrating that your product or service can meet those needs at a time and at a price point that's acceptable to that client. And the principles are the same no matter what you're selling, that you have to demonstrate a value proposition to your client. So how can you run a business without understanding what need it is you're trying to fulfill out there?
Without understanding. And I think that maybe we'll just end on that because I would suggest the reason that most organizations struggle is they presume they don't go in there and get that understanding, right? So again, I'm a big believer that questions and curiosity is a superpower, and whether it's marketing or sales or helping someone sell a business, right? It's the work that you do to get that understanding, which makes it all work together. So listen, we're basically at the mark, Gary. Thanks so much for coming on. You nailed
Terrific.
it. And I guess maybe the question here is, if somebody wants to learn more about Catchfire and the work that you do from the M&A space, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Oh, they'll find us on LinkedIn or they'll find our website, catchfiregroup.ca.
Very good. Thanks,
Excellent.
Thanks,
Gary.
guys. Always a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Gary.
Thanks, Tim. Take care, guys.
See you
Thanks, Scott.
soon.